Jared, in trying to understand religion, of recent date, evolutionary psychology has been looking at the development of the human species and seeking evolutionary reasons why certain mental functions have developed, and religion has been one of the core interests. How do you go about that?
In trying to understand the near ubiquity of religion, yes, there are some functions of religion that are recent political, social functions of religion, but humans have been around for 5 million years, and most of those 5 million years were before there were any kings or state governments. So religion had to have some original functions. I see 3 of those original functions as being explanation, diffusing anxiety, and providing comfort in the face of bad things in the world. Just to start off with explanation. Nowadays we have scientific explanation that tells us why the winds are blowing and the tides are moving, why birds are singing. But before there was science, people still asked themselves why the wind's blowing and the tides moving and the birds singing, but there wasn't science to give the answers. So religion provided answers. Among the New Guinea societies where I work, why do birds sing? Well, there are stories that this bird sings because this bird is transformed from a little child who had lost its mother, and it's called, ooh, and that's then the song of the bird. So now we know as scientists that birds sing for different reasons, but that explanatory function was wide. Then in the times of the ancient Greeks, so the ancient Greeks had science, but they didn't know why there were tides, and they talked about Neptune driving tides and Phaethon driving the sun chariot. And today we talk about meteorology and the heliocentric So religion has lost much of its explanatory function for scientifically minded people today. But there are people who are not scientifically minded who still use the explanatory function of religion, which must have been one of the original functions of religion.
And that means that we, as human beings, seek, if not absolutely need, explanation. That's part of our core being, is we demand explanation one way or another.
We humans make our living, as distinct from other animals, by seeking explanation. The reason that you and I are having this conversation and the chimpanzees are in zoos is that you and I and all 7 billion other humans are good at looking at a mark in the ground and recognizing that mark is a footprint of a deer, pull out the bow and arrow. It's a footprint of a mountain lion, let's move in the other direction. It's a mark of a turtle, oh, that might mean eggs. So we are constantly explaining all the stuff that we see around us.
Okay, now reduction of anxiety, that certainly sounds like it's an important survival mechanism.
Reduction of anxiety, yeah, it's an essential sanity preservation mechanism. Here's an example. At the time of the rocket attacks on northern Israel from Lebanon, this was highly stressful. People living in northern Israel, when the siren went off, they knew that the rockets were coming and that they could go into the shelters, but the rockets might destroy their homes. So what are you going to do to preserve your sanity in the face of these anxiety-provoking events? It turned out that religious Israelis would recite psalms, and they would recite psalms when they heard the rockets coming. They would recite psalms all day. There are a couple of psychologists, philosophers, who studied symptoms of anxiety among Israelis who recited psalms and didn't recite psalms, such as, do you sleep, do you feel anxious, do you get angry spontaneously? And the people who recited psalms showed fewer symptoms of anxiety than the people who didn't recite psalms.
I would assume the damage to their homes were equal.
Damage to the homes are equal, but they don't believe it. They thought that reciting psalms actually, in addition, protected their homes, and the statistics are difficult, so you don't know that that's not true.
Right.
But what certainly is the case is that reciting the psalms allowed you to preserve your sanity under stressful circumstances. That's a model for the value of religion in helping us deal with all the anxieties of life.
And so, if that's true today, arguably that would have been true for the development of human history. And I would think in earlier ages, when that would even be more important to personal survival, to be able to be the ones to have reduced stress under circumstances.
I agree with you. As we humans have gotten more and more control over the world, there are fewer uncontrollable and unpredictable threats. But for traditional people who have to deal with lions and trees falling down, there are a lot more unpredictable threats, and so religion served a larger function in reducing anxiety.
And to continue the thread, so we get it. So the people who were religious, spontaneously say, then had less stress. And if they had less stress, they were more able to cope with life. And if they're more able to cope with life, they survived more in order to pass their genes on. I mean, we have to make the linear connection between the initial religiosity and the enhancement of those genes that cause that.
Yes, if you're less anxious and less stressed, then you're going to be more effective at keeping your cool and tracking down and killing that hippopotamus and bringing home all the meat and feeding your babies and passing on your genes, ultimately because you were less anxious and you could kill more hippos and feed more babies.
Yeah. Okay, the third category is reaction or defense mechanism when bad things happen, including death. And how does that enhance the religious nature of the group?
Bad things do happen. People die. We have a sense of justice, but unfair things happen. We have what we could call bad luck. How do we keep our sanity in the face of all of this? It would be easy to be frustrated, to give up, to commit suicide, or to adopt non-adaptive behaviors. What do we do to give ourselves comfort when someone dies or when bad things happen? That's an important function of religion that we see today, and we know that it was important thousands of years ago at the time of the first writing, 5,400 years ago, and we infer that it's been around for tens of thousands of years because traditional societies use religion to provide comfort when bad things happen or when you have an accident or when someone dies. So this provision of comfort is another one of these long-standing benefits of religion.
You don't see the latter in the animal kingdom. There may be hints of it with elephants or whales or something, but in general you don't. But what is it about human beings that need that type of comfort when bad things happen?
We need it because we ask questions. For a whale, a whale probably does not have a concept of death. A whale does not know that it is going to die. Yes, there is this other whale that gradually turns cold and floats down to the bottom, but the whale does not have a conception of death. We do have a conception of death, and that makes us ask driving questions that haunt us but don't haunt whales. When we became intelligent enough to have big brains and to ask these questions, we then needed some way of answering the questions, and that was religion.